Hey everyone, I'm Mike Henry, and this is my Procreate 4 demo for the piece I call Last Drink. So I just wanted to do a fun, like, kind of film noir detective, sort of down and out dude type thing. So that's what this is. There's really no backstory to it except what's in this image, so now we'll just move into drawing it. This is mostly all normal stuff that you've seen me do. There's going to be a couple of things here or there that will seem just a little bit different, but for the most part it's going to be everything that you normally see. Some special things about this one: you're going to see me do a little bit of the bloom stuff that I did on the robot athletic dude that I did a bit ago, where I have like a bright section and then I bloom it into the shadow. And you're gonna see some stuff with glass and liquid, which I actually will do a separate breakout for that so you can see what that is, and we'll get there in a bit. As for what I drew it with the fat pencil, which is linked below. I'd used a just larger size of it for the rough, and then a smaller size of it so that I could get tight lines. A lot of people ask me about my lines, how I get them so sharp or so crisp, and unless I actually sort of sat with you and saw exactly how you were doing it, it'd be a little bit hard for me to advise on how you might do it differently. What I can tell you is that a smaller, tighter brush will produce something that is ultimately sharper than a big fat brush, especially when you're using something like the fat pencil where the base texture has a little bit of a fuzziness to it. So if you are looking at this drawing right here in front of you and you see how thick that jawline is, that jawline was not done with a thick version of the fat pencil. In fact, if you watch any of these lines, you can see that they're actually built up as opposed to just drawn. And so that's something that can add to how crisp the line is. If you're going in with something with a small version of the fat pencil and you sort of trap out exactly where you want that line to be, or you at the very least build it up like I may do from time to time, that's going to give you something that is sharper. Another thing that a lot of people ask about is my canvas size. In almost all my pieces, I post down below what my canvas size is, but I want to stress it here because we've got fairly clean line art, and I know that I'm going to get the question, so I want to make sure that your settings are similar to mine if in fact you're running into problems where you're not getting a certain look you're looking for. This one is 12 inches horizontally or wide by 8 inches vertically or high, or tall, wide, tall, whatever the nomenclature you want to go with is, and it's set at 300 dpi. So some people will go back to my past videos for the fat pencil and they'll look at it and they'll say, I'm not getting the same results as you are. There's a few reasons why that may be. I don't think it has anything to do with the settings. There could be something weird there. I don't know what it is. I show in that video exactly how I built my fat pencil, which, to say built it, I just adjusted one thing. As far as other contributing factors, it could be maybe you work with a canvas size that is different than mine, so the brush might appear like it's doing something differently because it's set at a certain pixel size. There could also be the thing about building up the lines or trapping the line and filling the line. That could also contribute to what the final result is when you're laying in lines. Now that all of that's out of the way for now, we'll get back to the character. So this guy, I sort of thought when I was working on him that it'd be dope to do the blinds in the background and just have it be so that he's backlit. And since I already had him toasting, I was like, okay, what else could be interesting? Or he's got like this shot glass and he's maybe toasting to someone that we can't see, and then there's something with him. And what was with him was I decided to go with the fact that he's like sort of beat to shit. That is the entirety of it. The hope is that you wonder who he's toasting to, why he looks that way, what the story is, to which there isn't one, but I encourage you to come up with one. That actually could be really fun if you, yeah, well, he's got the, and you just come with a backstory. Anyways, here you can see that I drew through the shirt as to where the tie would be. Obviously, since these are all in different layers, which you can see there with the opacity reduced, you can see that I then draw the tie on top. The tie was super rough, so I did a slightly tighter rough, and then I went back in and did cleaner lines on it. This piece, I believe, was sitting around for a little bit. I did the rough, and then I did a little bit of it, but I've actually been not deliberately experimenting, but I've essentially been experimenting with trying to keep a lot of pieces going at the same time. That way I don't get too bored with anything, and then I can decide, okay, I'll go back to that one or go back to this one. I'm usually very linear. I decide I'm going to do it, I sit down and I do it, and then that's it. But lately, this for instance was one of 5 or 6 pieces that I have sort of going, and so I came back to it every now and then. Here's something I've done in the past where I'm doing a tight shot, so then I zoom it out in order to sort of reconcile the anatomy since it's such a tight shot, and then I zoom it back so that I have the right reference. Here's me being very anal about the way that I was going to draw this glass. This was before I decided to actually fully just render the glass as opposed to coloring the line art. Although, of course, having the clean lines helps, because if I ever want to do something different with this, or I just want to share the line art by itself, it's nice to have. So I built the glass separately, perfectly vertically, so that I could get it as symmetrical as possible, and then I warped it over into his hand, just slightly rotated and scooted it so that it was as like machined, or as what's the word I'm looking for here? Hard surface. Let's just go with that. It's as hard surface as possible against the rest of him, which there's nothing really else except for theoretically his buttons that are hard surface. So now I'm going in and doing the fingers and reconciling in general the pose of what those fingers, how those fingers are. When we get to the coloring stage, you'll see a lot more sort of comes into play with that glass and the whiskey in the glass and other things. One of my biggest influences, which I think goes unsaid a lot, is Giant Robo. If you've never seen the anime Giant Robo, I think it's the greatest thing ever, basically. And the stylization of hands in Giant Robo, I think, is excellent. The weight that those characters have is really good. And so if you go back through if you watch that anime and then you go back through my work, you'll see where that influence really comes in really strongly. And I would say that the hands in this shot are an example of when I'm being most influenced by that, as opposed to being influenced by something else. Not all the time when I draw hands am I sort of dabbling in that look and feel, but in instances like this, it definitely feels more Giant Robo than say like the scientist that I did that's running experiments on himself, or the next piece that you see me post, which will be a clicker from The Last of Us. That one, like, I wasn't really thinking Giant Robo when I was doing the hands, but in rewatching this, that's definitely where some of that comes from. Same thing even with just sort of the general structure of the character, which you'll see that time and time again in my work if you pay attention to that anime and then pay attention to sort of how I construct some of my shapes. So of course now I'm laying down the master flat for the entire piece, which is just one big solid shape that I'm going to use for selections going forward. So you can see here now I've got his general skin tone. I've also colorized the lines and set those to multiply, and now I'm using that base shape to then do these other things. So you select that shape, or excuse me, actually paint in the hair and then select that main shape and select the inverse and then delete away, and that clears that layer for me. I've then also got the blush on the nose and the ears from selecting it, the 5 o'clock shadow. So you see here that it keeps getting filled in really messily and then it gets cleared, and that's because I'm using that master flat in order to trap those shapes. That was me finishing off the sleeve where the button is and the sleeve sort of connects. So then I threw in the fingernails and duplicated the lines and blurred them a little to give it all a bit of a soft feel. And now I'm going in and putting in some of the damage, some of the blood, and this is done through painting it in with lots of different textured things, and then using the smear tool to give it like a natural smear, like he rubbed it or it like got caught for a second. But now let's pause for a second. We're going to talk about glass tricks. Now, I don't really like using the word tricks because I think it's much more valuable to just sort of work hard at understanding how different surfaces are. But I wanted to sort of show you the way I might break down something like a glass, and that is how I broke down the glass in this, and it's similar to how I broke down the glass in the last piece of Celeste. And so this might be considered a trick to someone who maybe hasn't had the time to invest in figuring this out. So all I do is I use these rudimentary shapes to construct the shape of what's going to become glass. So in this case, I used the big hard brush and made a big circle, and then just, flattened it into an ellipses, and then duplicated it and shrank it and just kept it centered and moved it downward. And now on a new layer, I'm going to fill in the main body of the glass. Because the canvas is a square, it's very helpful. You just fill it in and then start transforming it. All I'm doing here is I'm lining it up with the horizontal center point. I guess you could say it's actually the vertical center point, so sorry about that, but right there you can see, trying to get that center point and then trying to get those corners lined up. It's a little easier in something like Photoshop, but in Procreate it can certainly be done. You can see here I'll switch to Distort and go ahead and move some of that stuff around. I just realized I said at the beginning of this that this was a Procreate 4 demo. In reality, the actual piece was done in Procreate 4, but then this part of it was done in 4.1 or whatever the newest version is. So that's why you're seeing different controls here. My next video will actually be all the new version of Procreate. So now I'm just lining up those corners to make sure that it's solid and it doesn't look like it's a bunch of 2D shapes slapped together. Now here we'll duplicate the bottom piece. And we'll just scoot that up a little bit. This is just trying to establish that bottom part of the glass where there's a big chunky part of glass there. Oh, I should also stress that this is a very simplistic, quick way of explaining this. A lot more love and care and a lot more consideration can go into this, and you can do a much better version than what I'm doing right here. This is just to get you thinking along these lines as to how I construct this. So now we duplicate that middle chunk. You can see here then I turned off one part of it. And then I'm going in and deleting that top part away. And so that now is giving me two different bits. It's sort of like the top part where it isn't just a thick chunk of glass, where it's got the two layers to it, the layer that's closest to us and the layer that's farthest away from us, and then that bottom chunk. Now I'm duplicating that top circle, ellipses, and then shrinking it and warping it so that it now will represent the hole in the top, basically. So the mentality that I want you in when you're looking at this is the problem-solving aspect of it. Again, this is going to be a rudimentary version of this, but it's about sort of looking at it and saying, okay, what is a glass really when I look at the tools that I have? Well, from top down, it's a circle. So if it's in perspective, it's some ellipses, and I'm taking it and I'm constructing the top ellipses and the bottom ellipses, and then by doing that, it's giving me the parameters for where the middle chunk exists, and then you're just sort of going component by component and saying, well, what more do I need to make this more like a glass? Oh, well, I need a hole in the top. So you select that inner thing and then you delete away. And now you can see we've got that rim. We've got the glass backing to it. We've got the bottom glass chunk to it. And now what we can do is we can start trying to do what glass actually is, which is a clear surface that reflects light. It has a high specular, high reflectivity, I guess. Is that a word? Okay, anyways. I'm basically self-taught, so my terminology is all over the fucking place. So now we are using that core shape as a selection, and we're just using a soft white brush to add in the rim light. And the rim light is going to be super intense here because it's just as accurately as possible reflecting everything around it. For the sake of this demo, we're not going to go into crazy detail there. We're just going to start doing some things to imply that, like all things technically, you can't see it except for the fact that light hits it. Well, with glass, it's more specifically, you can't really see it. You can only see what exactly is bouncing off of it. This is the least scientific way of explaining this, I know, and there are going to be people that are probably like, that isn't fucking accurate at all. But really what I'm trying to point out here is that these reflections are really the only thing that we're seeing, unless the glass is colorized in some way or if it's filled with something and that helps define its shape. So for the sake of this, I'm just taking each one of these sections and I'm selecting them, and then I'm filling them with white with some softness. Here I took that outer rim and I selected the inverse of that, and then I blurred it, and now I'm selecting the inverse of it again and clearing it, and you can see right here you get that rim on top. Now I stopped there on the actual shape. I could also do some stuff with that bottom chunk of the glass to really sell that that's there. I could put some dark stuff in here because it's reflecting dark things. If there were other things in the room, you could get really accurate about that. But right now I just wanted to show the process of breaking it down into its simple shapes, adding light and shine and all of the and reflection in order to try and sell it. And that is sort of going to get you to where you're thinking about glass in the right way, at least, or any type of thing that is like glass, and then you can build on that and make it more accurate and do a whole lot more than what's in this little demo right here. So now I'll select the main shape and select the inverse of that to clear that shine, and then I'll also select that rim at the top real quick because it you can see where the shine is overlapping there. And now we're done. That's the glass. That's the most basic way of showing you sort of the mentality and the little techniques to get there. So now back to the piece, you can see this go through really fast in the actual illustration. And here I'm trying to do the liquid that's inside, the light coming from behind it from the blinds, the glass around it, and I'm trying to capture all of these different things in order to really sell the materials of that. So I thought it'd be neat to have this sort of like cartoony character, and then he's holding something that has semi-realistic materials. So here you can see I'm trying to capture maybe something that's a little bit more indicative of the room around him, and then I add little shadows from his fingers, interrupting the shines and all that stuff. So and then his hand showing through the back of it there. Now we move into the shadow. So the shadow, he's backlit, so we're going to try and capture that as accurately as possible. It's kind of nice because you get to do this big dramatic lighting with this big, just blobby shadow across the whole thing, and it adds a lot of weight to the image, and it's a fairly cheap way of going about it because you actually aren't defining a whole lot of the anatomy, or the shapes I should say, the form, with the shadow. I do a lot of things throughout here where I'm tweaking colors and I'm doing little things like that, which is somewhat unnecessary to explain. It's really more just personal preference of me tweaking it. Now here I go in and I do a new shadow that is just the adding definition to the parts of him that are in shadow. And I did all of this with Select Paint, Select Clear, which I explain that technique in a video, which I've linked down below, so you can check that out. It's just the easy way to go about doing this. As for that bloom that's coming into the shadow, that's just done by selecting everything where the light is and duplicating it and putting it on top as like an add layer, and then blurring it, basically. I also talk a lot about that in the robotic athletic guy. I forget what that piece is called, but you should be able to find it pretty easily because it's a guy in an 80s leotard with big robot arms. So here I'm just adding a little bit more damage. I felt like he wasn't beat up enough and he wasn't, his clothes weren't trashed enough, so I go in and add some of that. Again, using one of the more organic brushes and then using the smudge in order to make it look like it's been just flat out smudged. Add some glass blood so that looks good. Add little scrapes in the blood where it maybe is dried on his fingernail. I wanted to mess with some light rays of light, but it looked like shit, so I abandoned that really quickly. Just adding some last minute shines and some last minute touches like noise and vignette, and there we go. I really enjoy doing pieces like this because they're simple and you get to experiment a little bit in a really small space, and that's just really fun for me. So thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing, and I'll see you on the next one. And if you're looking for me on the internet, these are the places where you can find me.